So we are going to be talking about, of course, the cover art uploader. This is a new feature that was developed specifically for Evergreen, Indiana. We have a lot of libraries who are, thankfully, this is a really great thing, cataloging in items that may not have cover art provided in the normal ways that they are provided here. So the purpose of this feature in the software is to add images in those appropriate spots in the catalog so that we have those visual references, which a lot of us really depend on in the way that we gather information, and we're very image-oriented people, and our patrons are as well. So currently, we have cover images that are provided by third-party providers. They're stored in something that's called memcache. It's a type of cache like you would talk about for a browser. This is a specific cache to put those things in, and they then display in the patron and staff catalog search results, in the bibliographic record summary, in the image view, or the bibliographic record summary in the individual record pages. And then if you click on one of those images, you also see then the full size large image of that. And in this example, if you take a look up here in the header, it also gives you the dimensions of that image, and that can be a helpful thing to reference as you get further into this project. I do want to point out that I very purposefully used so many images of James Patterson here because I thought y'all would appreciate that. Right now, we have a problem though. Not all of the items that we have in the catalog have art available through those third-party vendors. So how then do we get this type of record to show an image there? What has currently been happening is some type of image is gathered from a librarian that is submitted to the help desk, and then Bob Jackson, who does a lot of these things for us, resizes it to all of the different sizes that it needs to be, puts it in the appropriate place on the Evergreen servers, so then it is referenced by the database to display here. It's a lot of, I won't say that it's necessarily difficult work. It is a lot of busy work. This is something that was perfect to be automated. Now with the cover art uploader, it's going to take that original file that would have been submitted to Bob, and it's going to automatically resize for the appropriate places and create those different images, and then it's going to put it in the right place on the servers so that when a search is performed or a record is opened, that image is there. You can see here we have another place where this image would be, but it is empty. So now if we take a look, this is where we're going to begin this. And actually, I want to pop back here. There is documentation for all of this. It is in the 3.7 catalog, which has not yet been released because we have some updating to do on some images. But here is the quick link for it, and this will be available through the website very soon as well. And I will include this in the follow-up email that will come out tomorrow. Also, this link to this chapter, so that, and of course, it actually sent me right to this training manual. I'm going to pop down here and actually get to, let me see what I've actually named this. There we go. Adding or replacing cover art. And it includes how to use this. There are a few more things that need to be added to this including the image size considerations that we'll talk about in a few moments, but this is included. And let me actually link that. I feel like this link didn't actually come across correctly. So that's going to go directly to the documentation for this cover art uploader. So now we have then this menu that is in the staff catalog. You can see it under other actions. You click on that where there were previously only 3 options. Now there are 4, and the third one is upload cover image. That's going to open a modal. In this example, we have this puzzle, a Harry Potter puzzle that doesn't have cover art. And so I have sourced an image, and we'll talk about sourcing images in just a few minutes. Chosen that, click upload cover image, and now we can see that that has actually been added to our record summary, to our search results, and to all of the other places in the software. I'm going to actually go through and show you live real quickly how this worked. So I am on the training server. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log out of this real quick in case you have not been on this training server. To get there, you're going to go to this address, which I'll put into chat. This is also linked, I believe, through the website. Let me double check that that's true or not. Member resources, training. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I would expect it to be here. It is not here, so we will add it there as well to use the training server. But it is essentially exactly the same as going to the production database. And in this case, I'm going to just add training in front of that training dot. Yeah, I'll just do this. And if it doesn't like it, it's going to take me to the login. So one thing to notice about this, it has some stuff in red. So please read the stuff in red. It says, remember that normal Evergreen logins will not work on this server. And then there is a link here to the special set of usernames and passwords that you can use. I recommend that you pick a library branch to be associated with, and then you use the staff accounts that you need to use for that branch, just to get in the mindset, this is my library, this is how it's going to work for my library. So you can see here that we don't have all of the Evergreen Indiana libraries. In fact, this is a fantasy consortium, a little bit smaller, but has enough detail that you can practice some skills on there. The first thing that you are going to need to do when you log into this is you won't have a workstation set up. Now, in your library, it may be such that you have somebody that needs to register workstations for you. You don't need to have that happen in this case, because one of the things that you have access to, and in this case, we'll say for Janetown Public Library, is that you have access to a local admin account using this set of credentials. So you can log in your own self and register your workstation. There are instructions in the local administration training manual on how to register that workstation if you have never done that before. I'm going to just pop this into chat as well. You want to take a look at that information. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Apparently, I need to type things better. Okay, so I actually made sure that I had a record here that would qualify for what I was doing. So I added this record before. So I have this puzzle that it included in here. I went ahead and I added a holding in a very sloppy fashion. So it has essentially no circulation modifier added to it or anything like that right now. Doesn't really matter in this case. So in order to use this tool, you're going to get your list of results. I know that this is what I'm looking for. I'm going to click into that, which is going to take me into the staff catalog, which allows me then all of the options that we talked about in the new cataloging features, as well as other things. I don't need to go anywhere else in here now. It may be such that I do want to find out more information from the mark if I'm looking for cover art for this. So that may be something that you need to do either in the mark edit or mark view. There may be other things to do, but for this feature, all we have to do is go to the other actions and go to upload cover image. So I'm going to go in here and try to remember where I actually put my so I actually know it's in here because I put it in here very purposefully. But one thing that I do want to say about just your display as you are doing this. I know that I prefer to see these thumbnails here. It tells us what we're looking for. I mean, oftentimes we have a visual thought about what that is in our head. But because of what you're going to be doing here, you are very likely going to need to be toggling between the details view in your folder and a thumbnail view if you really need the thumbnail view. I tend to leave mine in details view and then have the preview pane open so that I can click through and see those things. But what I really need to know for the purposes of this feature are the file type and the size. Is it a file type that's supported? Most of your standard file types will be supported, but you need to double check. And you can see down here, I have a few, this .webp, which is not a supported type in this, but it is an image file. So I wouldn't want to select that one. And then the way that we have this set up, and I'll talk about that in a second, is that we do have a limit on how big the file size can be. Now, in this case, I know that this falls well within that. In fact, I resized it to fit well within there. So I'm going to select this, and we're going to talk about why this image looks like this in just a moment as well. You can see I have it right here. I'm going to upload the cover image. If this is a record that does not have an image with it at all, this will likely show up right away. If it had an image and you are adding one, you may need to go into the developer tools on your browser, and I'm using Chrome. So my developer tools are under this vertical ellipses and then more tools. I think they're a little in a subtly different place in Firefox. What that does is it activates different types of reload up here on your refresh button, reload button. So you may, if it doesn't show up right away, need to click hard reload, and then it would show up. So I'm going to go ahead and close those developer tools. And so now I can go back to the results. You see that it shows up here. If I look in the patron view, which is not working on training, it would show up there. And I'm wondering if I can go to the OPAC. I'm not going to worry about that. We're working on some other things on training right now as tests for production that are kind of messing it up a little bit. So, but then if I also click on that, it shows me this large image as well. I'm going to close some stuff here. I'm going to leave that open for a minute. Okay, some things to consider as you are gathering images to add to the servers for Evergreen. While there are several file types that are supported here, our recommendation is that you choose either JPEG or a PNG or PNG file. And it really is up to you which you prefer to do, as long as you keep in mind that the maximum original file size is 500 kilobytes. Some reasons why you might pick one or the other in terms of a JPEG or a PNG file. JPEG is what we call a lossy file type, so that as you lower the size of it, which is kind of a misnomer, if you make it smaller, it tends to discard a lot of information in each of the little pixels more than a PNG was. And it does that specifically so that it takes up less space. Now, sometimes some of that information that gets discarded, and it's going to generally be color information and things like that, that information that gets discarded is something that the algorithm determined wasn't necessary for it to still look like the image that it's supposed to look like. In some cases, that algorithm is wrong, and it actually makes the image look bad. And you have all experienced that when with a JPEG, you kind of look at it and maybe it looks like it's wavy and the edges are fuzzy and those types of things. Where with a PNG file, it does allow you to still scale it without losing that information. It is still compressed, but it is compressed differently. And so depending on what your image is and how it looks, and this is a very subjective thing, you may come up with a preference, or you may go in between a JPEG or a PNG. I am a huge fan of PNG files, and I will say that because I also value space economy, I am trying to use JPEGs for this more than PNGs. They do tend to be just fine for a website images, and that's what Evergreen presents to all of us. It is a web application. So there's that. And then the other thing is this aspect ratio. And I'm thinking that we may have some further development in this part in the future that treats the search results a little bit more kindly. But all of this is doing when it is resizing that original image. It is has created what's called a bounding box, and there are some actual specifications for that I will be adding to the training manual. That's one of the things I need to add, that it resizes it to. And the smallest dimension on this is always going to be where it stops first. So I'm going to actually bring up this training server here and show you some examples of where it got a little bit hairy. So this is the training server again, and I did something that I know is going to get more results. We went in and added some various things here. And actually, I think I want to, you may already be seeing some of the silliness that happened here. So 2 examples. Let me go back to cello real quickly. You can see right here in the search results that this image right here works pretty well. You can see essentially the title, you get the image. It may look a little fuzzy, but if I click into that, it also renders well in the record summary. I'm not going to go to patron view because I know that's being fussy right now. But if I click on that, then you can see the full image there. Now I'm going to go back to these record results. And now we see in the second result, another image that is much less clear in what it is. If I click on that image, it's going to take me into the staff catalog again, and you can see how different that was from the image in the results. And now if I click on that, you can see the original size. And this is where you can really see that where it stopped in the bounding box for the resize. The widest that this image is going, or that it is going to go, is going to be 475 pixels wide. And so when it got to that wide, it stopped, of course, with the height. Now, would it be better to have maybe this larger image? I don't know. This is the way that it is set up because we want it to respect that. And that's why then, as you are considering images, we want you to get as close to this 5:8 aspect ratio as possible. So I do want to then go back to that image that we added here. So this is the puzzle that was described in that MARC record. And this is actually where I got the image. You will need to be careful on how you use certain images with certain records. If this somehow represented, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this other image. So if this were the image that I decided on, it may be such that, well, I would not use this image. And the reason why is that this shows the entire product in a way that I would be able to use this image to replicate the product and possibly be dinged for copyright on that. Whereas this is the box that the puzzle is enclosed in. It's something that has been used to promote that product already. And so in my mind, this is an appropriate image. I'm using it for what it was intended. To get this image, I actually opened it into a new tab. Depending on the item, you're not always going to be using Amazon either. I just happen to be. It's going to show up here, and you can see that this shape is different. So I just saved this. And I'm not going to save it here because I've already, well, no, I'm not going to. Catherine, yes, we'll go ahead and add that in there. And it's actually already included in the documentation that I need to add what those exact suggestions are for the pixel ratios. And I will say too, they don't need to be exact. Let me go back over here. If you have an image that kind of looks like this size, you're going to likely be fine with it. If you want to do things exactly and do a lot of graphic editing using either, I use Paint and I use GIMP all the time. And depending on how simple it is, I use Paint, even though I know that that's maybe sounds pretty low class, but but it's there, it's free, and it does what I need it to do. So, but you don't necessarily have to do that. If you find something that is close to that 5:8 ratio, you don't need to add a bunch of work. And I will say too, in this image, I put this ×5 and ×8, so that you know that this is a multiple of 5 years. It's not going to be like 5 inches by 8 inches or 5 pixels by 5. It's going to be a multiple of those things. And then the image, and I'm going to go back to this image here. Another reason that this is not great is that it doesn't have really high contrast and it's overly detailed, so that when we get here, those details really get lost. And if we see here where we have the problem with the aspect ratio, as well as the details, it really kind of, and I'm looking at it on a 24-inch screen and it looks pretty nonsensical there. So, which is the total opposite of the point in terms of adding cover art. We want it to make it more accessible for our patrons. Okay. What else do I want to make sure that we cover here? Well, I'm going to keep on going on, and then if there are questions or if you'd like more demonstration or whatever, that's great. Okay, so in terms of the image, if you have any questions about that, I would encourage you to reach out. We'll be glad to provide you with resources if you need a quick tutorial on some graphics editing. That is cool. One of the things that I will remind you is that in terms of getting these images, whatever these images are, there are a lot of different mechanisms there, depending on what you are actually getting images for. If you're talking about a kit, it may be such that or a tool like a drill, you may need to take a picture, or you may have the original box that it was in, or you may have, say you have somebody on your staff that does graphic design and you want to create an image that represents binge boxes, and somehow have that. You can create images, you can take pictures, you can do all of those things. It doesn't have to be from some internet source, but it can be. You just need to make sure that if it is from an internet source, that you are using it appropriately, and if attribution is necessary for it, that you also do attribution in some manner. So those things. We are going to be, and I'll be sending out an email tomorrow that allows you to, similar to a Cat 1 upgrade to permission, that allows you to request that that permission to be added to your Cat 1 account. But you will need to have supervisory permission for that, just like you do for Cat 1. If you are the supervisor, obviously you can give yourself permission to do that. But we do want to, of course, be respectful of your local organizations in giving this. We anticipate that this is going to remain an ad hoc permission that requires this or some level of additional training until it is integrated into the advanced cataloging training before we start adding it to that permission group, just because it is something that requires some different types of, I'm going to say, technological know-how, not necessarily things that you haven't used in a lot of other applications or situations, but not yet in this context. And we want to, but it is a very far-reaching change that you will be causing throughout the entirety of the catalog. And so we want to make sure that everybody that does that has an understanding of the implications and understanding of the process, and goes into it prepared. So we'll have that form that goes out in the email along with LEU certificates and links to the recording and the documentation that will go out tomorrow. I'm not sure if it will be the morning or the afternoon, kind of depends on a couple other things. And then as we get those back in, what I will be doing is adding that permission to your Cat 1 account, and this will only be available for people with Cat 1 accounts. I may or may not email you right away. So if you submit a form, I would anticipate that you're welcome to try it out in the next 2 or 3 hours. So depending on what's going on, I may be able to get out an email that says, hey, I upgraded this. I will always upgrade it faster than I send the email to you to let you know that I've upgraded it. So feel free to go in there, even if I have not yet responded. And it's either going to let you do it or it's not. So you're welcome to test that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I put the check-in form there. Okay. You can always email. You can put in help desk tickets or email or call directly, either myself or Keith. Here's our contact information. And if you have questions, I feel like I've gone really fast through this. It is a simple feature for sure. But it is an exciting and also pretty powerful feature. So any questions or comments that you have? A quick plug. 9.8. Oh, okay. I highly recommend GIMP. I know that Inkscape is a little bit more modern and Paint.net is a little bit less modern. But I will go ahead and show you exactly what I did with that one image. Once you upload the image, can you change it to something different? Yes, you absolutely can. And you're encouraged to. That said, brings up a point that I did want to cover. There are going to be records that you find that you don't like the image for. And if that is the case, our suggestion, and we'll be keeping track to a certain degree, is that you don't change it. If it represents the item accurately, even if there's perhaps an alternate cover or something like that, leave it alone. We really would like people to focus on things that have no images at all. But if there is something that is overtly wrong, and it's not because there's an issue with the MARC record, because sometimes that has to do with an incorrectly placed ISBN or something like that, then submit a help desk ticket so that we can review that if there is a question in your mind. Okay. But yes, you can absolutely overwrite pictures. And if you uploaded something and you're like, no, I need to do a better version, of course you can do that. And it is just as simply as uploading something new, it's going to overwrite it. Okay, if the image is from the internet, where do we record the credits? That is a good question, Janet. If it is something that you determine that you need to record the credits, in most cases, it won't be. My suggestion, though, is that you do that in the original file name. I'm not entirely sure if that will suffice at this point. I'm not sure if that file gets disposed of or if it is logged somewhere. So, but that's where I would start. But if you take a picture, or if you have a picture of original packaging or something like that, you should not have to necessarily attribute that, because the record itself is attribution of that. If someone on staff that needs to get this permission, if we have someone on staff that needs to get this permission but can't sit for a live class, do they or a supervisor just email you afterward if they watch the training recording? Other supervisor can email me after they watch the training. And hopefully I'll have that updated, so it will just be a matter of filling out the form that they have actually gone through there. But again, it will still require a supervisor to do that. Any other questions? I know a lot of people are very excited about getting to use this. The other thing that I will say is the training server is available to you right now. So if you want to go in there and practice, you should. April has a question. What if the image is not portrait in orientation? Okay, I am going to do this little demonstration because I think I can do it pretty fast. I'm going to go ahead and open up GIMP and make sure that you can actually see it. Okay, so this is GIMP. And I'm going to go ahead and open up an image as, well, I'll just show you how I actually did it with this. Oh, we've updated that. Let me pick something that's, oh yes, Tiger JK. So here we have an image that's square. I'm going to take a, and you can also see, I'm going to go into my file explorer and show you this as well. And you can see here that this is a, let me make sure I open the same one. What did I open? So I opened the JPEG version, good. So this does fall within the size limitations in here in terms of how big, how many kilobytes it is. It's less than 500. But it is, as you say, it's not the right aspect ratio. So this is where I actually just get out my calculator, and I don't actually remember what this formula was called, but it's how you do a ratio. And so I know that I'm going to go ahead and get my image information here. I'm going to 800 by 800, and actually that's up here. I didn't even have to open anything. It's listed up in this informational thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the canvas size. Let me open real quickly a calculator, show you that. So I know that my widest is going to be 800. Jennifer, you're not seeing anything? You may need to refresh it if it got stuck. You should be seeing, is everybody else seeing the GIMP with a calculator in front of it? Okay. All right. So I'm going to, and I'm also going to put this up here real quickly. How do I want to show this? Do it this way. This is a terrible way to do this. So you might remember back in the day that and I know that my narrowest column is going to be 800. So how you like that? There's algebra for you. So in this case, I'm going to do some quick algebra here. This is a terrible way to do this. 8 times 800 divided by 5. So now I know that I actually want my canvas not to be, let me get this out of the way, to not be this 800 by 800. I want it to be 800 by 1280. So now I'm going to go into canvas size. I'm going to resize all the layers. I'm going to actually fill this with a transparency. As you play around with this, it becomes a little bit more second nature. I forgot my number. My height is now going to be 1280. I do want to center that. And so now I'm going to resize that. And this is showing as black. That is hopefully a transparency, but we're going to find out. So now I'm just going to overwrite this. This is going to come up. I'm going to close GIMP. This might not have worked as well as I'd hoped. Go back into File Explorer. And I'm going to refresh that. So I don't believe that that hasn't changed. Let's see. JPEG can't handle transparency. Yeah, you're right. I was doing the wrong thing. So it will show up with that black background. This is what happens when I try to do things quickly. But it did save it, so that's all I really care about in this case. So I'm going to pop in here. See if this actually, I'm concerned that that didn't save correctly, but we'll give it a try. You can see this is one of the times I'm going to go into my developer tools. This is going to do a hard reload. And you can see that that shows up there. So that, and it doesn't look necessarily as good in this interface, but I do have this larger image. You can see that it resized it to 475 by 760. It takes advantage, but where it does show up better is going to be in the results rather than it being squished. What my hope is that in the future that this is handled a little bit differently and it doesn't require this kind of manipulation and makes this a little bit prettier. But we're not there yet for that. So, but that is how I resize the canvas for those things that are in that portrait mode, and that, or in the landscape mode. That is a consideration when you're looking for images. You may find that you need to do some more work if all you can find are things in landscape orientation, or kind of that more of a 1-to-1 aspect ratio, which would be square.